reminded me to remind everyone, just because he sits down doesn't mean you have to stop applauding. You know, what we're going to do is, I'm going to do my best to be absolutely quiet. You know, these are two great people doing it. We flipped an imaginary coin backstage, and Ben won the imaginary coin toss, so he chose to lead off. Ben?
Sure. So, I mean, I suppose the topic of this panel is whether to be pro-Trump or anti-Trump, except there's not a whole great diversity of view about that particular thing. Although I will give a shout out to all the fellows wearing the Make America Great Again hats. I'm sure we'll be tweeting momentarily that Sally is taller than I am, so that's very exciting. So, you know, my view of Donald Trump, I've said this many times, my view of Donald Trump is that Donald Trump is a hammer in search of a nail. Sometimes he hits a nail, and when he does, it's glorious. Sometimes he hits a puppy or a baby, and then it's ugly. The reason that I cannot support Donald Trump in good conscience is twofold. One, I don't think that he will be a good president, but I will say that I think that there's an 80% likelihood he will be a better president than the worst person in America, Hillary Clinton. That said, the reason why I don't personally support Trump is because I think that there's a 100% chance of the conservative movement breaking itself on the shoals, on the rocky shoals of Trumpism. I think that what I'm seeing is not people making the honest, but I think foolhardy argument that Trump is the lesser of two evils, so I vote for him, but he's not a good guy, he doesn't say good things, he says terrible things, he stands for nothing, he has more positions than the Kama Sutra. Now that would be an acceptable position, right? That's something with which I would basically agree, sort of. What I see is I see a lot of people who, in an effort to enthuse themselves about the election, have started to talk away all of the terrible things that Trump does and says and stands for, and pretend that he's an acceptable candidate because they need to feel good about voting for Donald Trump. Again, you want to vote for Trump as the lesser of two evils? I think that's acceptable. If you're saying that Donald Trump is a good candidate, or a good Republican, or a good conservative, or that he has any steady principles, or that he stands for the things you stand for, as opposed to standing for the things that he stands for, that I think is dangerous, and I think it undermines the very basis of the conservative movement. The analogy that I like to use to finish up here, so we brief, is that Barack Obama, in my view, took America toward a cliff. We were going at about 40 already toward a cliff. Obama put the pedal to the metal, now we're going 90 toward a cliff. Hillary would push the pedal further, she'd take us to 120. Trump might take us to only 100, but he'd also rip out the reverse gear. Because in my view, as a conservative, the only reverse gear, the only way to actually fix the country is to have a conservative president, a conservative Congress, who will minimize the size and scope of government, which ensures our freedom. Conservatism basically believes that government action is an obstacle to freedom. Leftism believes that freedom is an obstacle to government action. And so the Trump movement tends to not believe what conservatives believe. They actually believe in government action, they just believe that as long as they have their guy at the head of it, then that'll be okay, because they just need a big man who's going to run things. I object to that at an ideological level. And I think that if the conservative movement becomes the European populist far right, then every election cycle from here on in, we get an election between the far left and the European populist far right, and nowhere does the Constitution or individual liberty come in.
Sally, how did this come about? What led to this? Is this something is just 4 years or 8 years in making? Is this have its roots, the rise of Trump, way back? What led to where we are today?
So first of all, you know, and we'll get into some of this, but I actually agree with a number of the things you said, right?
Wow, okay.
You know,
we're done.
Yeah, so we're done. We're good. It's nice to go. Okay. Second, while I have a chance, I want to say two things to my new friend Ben. One is, I actually think it is a very brave thing in this moment, period, to put your principles ahead of your party, especially in an extreme You may have different reasons for why they're both against Trump, but
you might be happy
it's a
about it for a
principle,
different reason,
but I admire principles. So
I appreciate
Number two, if you all don't know it, Ben resigned from Breitbart News to support Michelle Fields, and the way that Breitbart had, as an outlet, had responded to the issues with Corey Lewandowski, and I admire that to no end.
No,
Again, I admire principles, so that's why I'm glad we're doing this. So look, I'm glad we're not debating liberalism, because you kind of misrepresented it a little. I supported Barack Obama in 2008, I supported Barack Obama in 2012, I supported Bernie Sanders in this election. Initially, I remained committed to not only continuing, look, as far as your cliff metaphor, we started on a cliff, right? We were on a big cliff in 07-08. Wasn't a Democratic president who got us there, right? It was tax cuts for the rich, it was the war in Iraq, it was, right? It was, infrastructure, job growth. More people than ever now have affordable health care, wages. But listen, in the face of all that, do I think we still need to do more? Yes, we do. Wages are still stagnant. They were stagnant in 07. They're back down. We have, both parties are still, praying before the gods of Wall Street. So I think we need major reform in this country that makes our political system actually accountable to working people. I also think, when I think about working people, I think about all working people. It includes white working class folks, it includes the Latino immigrants, it includes Muslim Americans, it includes everyone. That is my concern. And I will say, first of all, I am in this election supporting Hillary Clinton. Because, I don't know, I want an experience, yeah, well, that's fine. You keep blue all the way until November, see how that turns out for you. When push comes to shove, I want a president who is experienced, knowledgeable, a steady man who actually knows what they're doing. Look at what's happened in Europe. We can't have the kind of tumult. When you have a president, everything they say, the world hinges on, the markets hinge on. So whatever. Putting that all aside, just to be clear. Donald Trump's biggest argument is that we get to prosperity through bigotry. That's what he's saying. He's telling you the way to make America great again is to draw a more tight definition, both in terms of a physical border as well as a metaphorical wall, around who we consider to be American. And that our prosperity, which for 270 plus years in this country has relied on inclusion, growing and growing the promise of America and including more and more people in that promise, however imperfectly, that has been the history of what has made this country great forever. And Donald Trump has said, no, everything you've been taught about this country, everything you believe about this country is wrong, and that the way to get a better America is by discriminating against, by pushing people out of this country, by discriminating against people in this country, prosperity through bigotry. Plain and simple, that's what he's selling. I'm against it, and I do believe it has its origins in the Republican Party, which has been building that kind of resentment and otherizing in our American society for far too long.
There's a lot to unpack. So let's start with the...
Take your pick.
Well, I mean, we can start briefly with the Obama record. The idea that this has been anything but the worst recovery in American history is untrue. This has been the worst and weakest American recovery in the history of the country. And as far as why the collapse happened in the first place, the reason the collapse happened, obviously, is because we had subprime mortgages that were being backed by the federal government in order to discriminate in favor of particular races. And then the economy, it turns out, people who take out loans that they can't afford, they don't pay them back, and then the economy collapses. As far as Obamacare, my wife's a doctor, so I have a personal stake in this, but the way that you increase health care for people is by increasing the supply, not by increasing the demand. Obamacare increases the demand and diminishes the supply. I'm not going to argue about Trump particularly, although I think you actually are mischaracterizing some of Trump. I don't think you're totally mischaracterizing Trump, but I think you're somewhat mischaracterizing Trump. I think that Trump believes wrongly that prosperity comes through tariffs, and I think that's wrong. I think that's stupid economics. I don't think that, let's put it this way, I was hardcore on the border before Trump was, and I will be after he's not anymore. So my feeling about illegal immigration, the idea that illegal immigration...
So you support his immigration policies, you're just worried he's not deeply convicted enough to them?
At least in part. I disagree with him on H-1B visas, because high-tech visas bring in people who actually are capable of doing work and not taking taxpayer dollars, but people who are coming in who are lower income and living off the taxpayer. California economics proves this. Okay, if you bring in millions and millions of people who, and not because they're bad people, it's not nothing to do with that. The people who are coming in are looking for...
They're not bad, they're just stealing our jobs.
No, by the way, hold on. This is where I think that Trump is an idiot. I'm not saying that they're rapists. Don't mischaracterize what I'm saying because you're talking about what Trump is saying. Okay, my view is that in a perfectly welfare state-free society, open borders and free movement of labor is totally fine. It's the Milton Friedman position. The problem is when you give out welfare, when you give out free education, when you give out Obamacare, when you give out food stamps, and then you say to people, my front door is wide open, a lot of people are going to come in and they're going to take advantage of the system, which is what's happening in the state of Texas. But the argument that I'm making, you'll notice, has nothing to do with bigotry across the border.
No, conveniently not. Listen.
What do you mean conveniently? Hold on.
Wait, I will make, like, first of all, it is a fascinating argument to me to see that, because, by the way, and I'm not accusing you, like, I'm not like saying, oh, and you, right? But I am talking about, I'm talking about a policy and a practice in our country. Look, we happen to have this anti-immigrant surge at this moment in our country. You know, and I don't know if you've been to other panels, but if you've been watching the conversation, this isn't about, it's like, oh, well, we had the Irish and Italian immigrants, those were good immigrants, right? They came and they didn't, right? And they worked hard and they were the good immigrants, but now they're bad immigrants, right? It's people talking about they don't like immigrants who are moving into their community, changing the culture of their community. This is very much connected to Donald Trump. Look, this is the point of the whole freaking debate, right? This isn't new, this doesn't start with Donald Trump. And you're right, you can rationalize it. You can rationalize it in policy. You can say, yes, this is about not giving away government benefits to immigrants. But guess what? Your party also is the party that wants to cut those benefits. So it becomes an illogical argument to say, well, hey, we want to cut the benefits, but the fact that we have the benefits is our argument for not letting people in this country.
No, it's not illogical at all. I want to cut the benefits, and if you won't cut the benefits, then people can't come in and take them for free.
It is
not illogical at all.
In 2008, when he was running for president of the United States, he said that Mexicans are drug dealers and rapists. Now you have Donald Trump.
By the way,
he's not talking about banning European immigrants, right? He's talking about, we're not even talking about building a wall with Canada. Has anybody been to Canada recently?
Well, okay, let's be fair.
This is a very specific conversation. He is talking about making America great again by banning 30% of the world's population who are Muslims, and by rounding up and summarily deporting 11 million people who have come here to fill the same dreams that my ancestors came when we didn't have immigration policies. By the way, it's not like they got mine, there weren't lines, there were immigration policies back then. But my ancestors were white, so we didn't complain.
Sally, hold on. They're not like that our ancestors came over on the same boat. Right? And the difference is that when our ancestors came over, there was not a giant welfare state. So here was the deal that was made to immigrants. The deal that was made to immigrants was...
My grandfather got the GI Bill, my grandfather got housing subsidies.
Okay, so I'm 5 generations.
Social Security?
Okay, so I'm 5 generations. And the mass immigration that took place in this country, I mean, if you look at the curve, Sally, if you look at the curve of how many immigrants came into the country, most of America, there's a big bubble that happens at the beginning of the 20th century. There's a huge amount of immigration in the 1920s that is massively curved. That curve lasts all the way until 1965. In 65, there's a brand new bill, and that bill says that we're not going to choose basically which countries people come from anymore. And it does matter where people come from in terms of the cultures they're going to tend to hold.
Whoa, but I thought you said, wait, did everybody hear that? It's not about the particular immigrants, or it's just about the economic policy of them taking benefit. You just said you like certain immigrants more than other immigrants because the culture they bring to this country.
Okay, so let me explain. Right, so here's the deal. In the presence of a welfare state, which exists in 65, you have to pick and choose which immigrants you bring in. You do. I mean, otherwise everybody just comes in.
I agree.
Okay, if you agree, then what is your standard for bringing in immigrants? Clearly it's not taking federal benefits or state benefits. Clearly it's not jiving with our culture. You don't want any restrictions on immigrants. Should we get 6 billion people coming over here? Where do you draw the line?
Okay, well, I do want restrictions on immigrants. I want to, but I want to have a line and a process and a system.
Can you explain?
Wait.
Explain what?
You just
I'll tell you where I'll draw the line.
Explain why you're drawing the line around culture, please.
Because culture makes a difference to a country.
So tell me, who are the American enough cultures to come in?
Anybody, any individual, any culture, and devotees of any culture who believe in individual freedom, who believe that they actually have to take it, that they have to believe in the notion of private property and constitutional limited government. That's what we've got into countries about.
Who the fuck have you ever met in this entire green, beautiful world who does not believe in individual liberty?
Are you kidding me? Well, this is legitimately fully delusional. 99%. By Gallup polls, 99%, I can't say polls. By Gallup polls, 99% of the population of Afghanistan believes in the implementation of Sharia law. That's not an individual freedom.
Don't do that. PolitiFact checked you on that and said you are missing. Oh no, but guys, like this is like I know we have a fact-free election, I understand. But you can't repeat lies enough and hope they become facts. It's not true. You're misrepresenting. You are misrepresenting Sharia law, and you are using Sharia law to suggest that everyone who believes in Sharia law believes in extremism. Gallup, the same organization, the same. Guys, don't get out in the world.
Sally,
Gallup said 7% of actual. Whatever. Go ahead.
Okay, I recommend that if you believe that, you try to go to a Sharia law believing Muslim and ask them to cater your lesbian wedding.
I have. Well, that's so interesting. Wait, this is where it gets great. I love when the conservative right in this country that has been attacking gay rights and the gay community and said that, well, you know, that faithful Christians, as part of their religion, shouldn't have to serve me a cake.
Right.
Right?
You know what?
Are now suggesting, right, but you support that.
You have a double
but
standard.
You wanna,
I'm pointing out your double standard. Yes, because you
I think they should all have to make me a cake then.
I know you do. Exactly.
But you don't.
You know, I believe nobody should have to make anybody a cake if they don't want to. That's all free.
So if you run a hotel in Alabama,
Yes.
you know, a Jew, a Muslim, and an African American walk up to your hotel, do you have to give them a room?
No.
Wow.
Hold on. I want to get back. This is, by the way, really fun and really good. But I'm not very smart, and I want to understand in the end, since I've been wrong predicting every single thing about Donald Trump, how did we end up here with the Republican Party in a never-Trump situation? Many people.
Yeah.
Democrats mocking him in many ways, much as they actually did with Ronald Reagan back in 1980.
The difference was that Reagan had been a conservative for 20 years.
So, the question is, why are we where we are today in this political system, in this election? How did this happen and how did this rise? Then we can go back to the issue.
Sure.
Somebody please explain to me this basic thing.
Okay, so, sorry, that's getting fun, but
It's all fun. It's a blast.
Okay, so my theory of why Donald Trump is rising is because Donald Trump is the reactionary right. He's not a consistent constitutional conservative. He's a reaction to the Obama era. And he's a reaction really to three things. He's a reaction to this feeling that the establishment doesn't care about normal people, and that the Republican Party has abandoned the normal conservative, and therefore, and the normal Republican, forget conservative, the normal person who's living in the heartland has been abandoned by this Republican Party that believes in a Wall Street brand of doing business, and so he's a reaction to he's an anti-establishment candidate in the same way that Bernie on the left is an anti-establishment candidate. He's also a reaction to political correctness, which is why Trump has this annoying habit of declaring everything stupid he says politically incorrect. Some of what he says is politically incorrect, some of what he says is just being an asshole. But the fact is that the left has been so overt in its attempt to shut down modes of speech that when Trump says things that are whether they're vile or whether they're not vile, people are willing to cheer just because they hate the standard so much. There's a reaction to political correctness. The final thing I would say about it is a reaction to the third thing is that there's a feeling among many conservatives, and not just conservatives, among many people across the country, that President Obama believes that the power and the role of the United States in the world ought to be minimized because he doesn't believe in foundational principles of the country. And he really believes that we ought to have a more equal international rule. And so Trump comes along and he reflects this sort of unthinking jingoism. I don't want to call it patriotism because I don't think he believes in founding principles. But he reflects this idea that I'll make America great again. Now, I don't think he knows what made America great in the first place, which is why I objected him. But I think that people who are embracing him are doing so because, okay, at least that guy is willing to stand in front of the American flag, right? At least this guy is willing to say, make America great again, whereas Barack Obama is only concerned with moving forward, or Hillary's only concerned about herself. So it's those three forces, I think, that are driving.
This is interesting. So first of all, I agree. The one thing I will agree on, I don't think Trump is a reaction. Here's the thing. I would say Trump is a Frankenstein's monster created by the Republican Party. Now, the one point I think we agree on is part of what he is an extension of is a Republican Party that has too long been elitist, pro-big business, pro-super-rich in its policies that has alienated broad swaths of this country. By the way, also true to some degree of the Democrats, worse the Republican side than the Democratic side, but that's one. There are four other factors that, yes, people go, oh, how did Donald Trump happen? Muslims. So he wants to build a wall and ban Muslims. Oh my gosh, how did we get to this kind of hateful guy? Well, we had a hateful party in this country for decades and decades and decades. You want to take the Democrats to task in the first half of the last century? I am more than happy to do so.
No, I want to take you to task for putting hands up to
I'm talking about...
That's race baiting. It wasn't his race baiting. This idea that
I will... Wow. Man.
Sorry. It's not political petty at all, because the fact is that the entire Democratic Party, the entire Democratic Party establishment embraced a bigoted and divisive view of politics. Now you're turning that's my party.
The Republican Party has, for the last several years, leading figures in your party demonized Muslims. Not just extremist radical Muslims, but all Muslims, such as when you draw an overly broad, factually incorrect argument to demonize all Muslims, or very large percentages of Muslims, such as when Michelle Bachmann said we should bomb Mecca. Okay, this is the Republican Party. This is not what happened under George W. Bush. It's what happened now. It is the reason, by the way, I don't even know why it's a slur, but in Republican world it is a slur. It's the reason why still 53% of Republicans believe that Barack Obama is a Muslim. How can that be? So you want to talk about baiting? You say, well, let's talk about baiting on immigration reform. When John McCain ran for president, supported immigration reform. Your party has historically, Ronald Reagan supported immigration reform. Your party has traditionally understood that this country has been built by many of us. But now, you demonize immigrants, you call them cockroaches, you say, we're going to... Republicans have called... listen, and here's what we want to talk about the public thing we do, we say illegals. We talk about people as illegals. Right. Dehumanizing. It is a different thing to say someone is here illegally than to say they're an illegal. They're not even a person anymore. I'm just turning them into a criminal class.
That's nonsense. When somebody commits a felony, we call them a felony.
Third, you want to talk about... You want to talk about, by the way, calling people felons is how we've also disenfranchised them and allowed them not to vote anymore because you dehumanized them. Let's talk about race and racial justice. The demonization of political correctness. You know, look, in my world, political correctness is called just being nice to everyone. Being respectful. By the way, for 200 plus years in this country, we've done it to white men. But suddenly, being nice and respectful. But suddenly, I'm sorry.
I'm just confused as to what this has to do with anything.
In 1980, when you're accusing my party of being the party that's race baiting, I thought it was very laughable. It was your party that started race baiting during Nixon and continued it very actively through demonizing welfare queens, through talking about Obama as a food stamp president. We're the race baiters?
That's race baiting. The majority of people on food stamps are white.
But do you know that the demonization of people on welfare has been, you don't think it's a racialized conversation?
I think that if I say that I object to people taking advantage of welfare, that has nothing to do with their race.
You know that when you're asking... Guys, this isn't a simple issue. We're not going to solve this right now. But we know that in this country, when you ask people, you say, do you think most people on welfare are on food stamps or white or black? Right? Fact. Here's a fact. And you're right, most people on welfare and food stamps are white. Right. Ask people who think that most people on welfare are white, right? They think, oh, they just fell on hard times. People who think that most people on welfare are black, incorrectly think that. Just think they're lazy. Okay. So it is a racialized discussion. When Ronald Reagan talked about welfare queens in South Side Chicago, he wasn't talking about white people. Okay, this heads up, right? This is not when Gingrich called Barack Obama the food stamp president, that was what is called a long whistle, because everybody hears it and they go, ooh, I know.
See, the difference
So
here's the difference between the Democratic Party and the Republican Party. So you accuse Ronald Reagan of doing dog whistles in a year, 2 years before I was born, presumably, or 4 years before I was born in 84. I can accuse the guy who's currently in office of not doing dog whistling, but openly race baiting by attacking police officers on the basis that they are all racist.
Never said that.
His support for the Black Lives Matter movement and Eric Holder's Department of Justice targeting dozens of police departments around the country and then telling them to restructure based on zero evidence of systematic racism whatsoever.
Not good.
Yes.
Which documented systematic patterns of people.
Right, based on an incident that never happened.
You don't believe that report. You think that report is bullshit.
No, I read the report all the way through. What the report said is that it's a local government taking advantage of its citizens, just like local governments all over the country take advantage of their citizens, and the vast majority of citizens of Ferguson happen to be black. The whole thing was.
But they're not doing it because they're like, you don't actually believe.
No, they're not doing it because they're black. And guess what? Stop and frisk. Here's a stop and frisk. The left believes that stop and frisk is racist because the vast majority of people who are stopped, Sally does obviously, believes that the vast majority of people who are stopped and frisked are black and Hispanic. That's because the vast majority of people in New York City who actually commit gun crimes are black and Hispanic. I'm sorry, I can't do anything about that.
Statistical regressions do we have to run? That's not true. Look,
yes, that is 96% of all gun assailants in January to June 2008. 95% of all gun assailants in the city of New York are black and Hispanic.
Guys, again, how many regressions do we have to run? Black and Latino folks are overrepresented in being pulled over, in being tried, and being sentenced, and being incarcerated again and again and again and again and again. What's those numbers? You don't believe it? No. What do you mean? This is the point.
You know why? The reason I don't believe that is because let's take
disturbing.
No, let's take speeding.
Let's agree on facts. That's how we have democracy when we can't.
Right, because you don't care about them, and I do. So that's it. You cited zero statistics, and I've cited about a dozen.
Hold on a minute. I'm actually trying to listen, and when you both talk, it makes it really, really hard.
Wow.
So if we could just wait, take a break. When I go like that, it means time to shoot, okay? Then finish up, and then go to second.
Sure. So it is not anybody's fault that 50% of the murders in this country are committed by young black men. It's not the fault of the people who are putting them in prison that those people happen to be black. It's not the fault of the New Jersey Turnpike Police that they're pulling over 23% black men when they did a statistical analysis and found that 25% of the people speeding were black. Okay, again, since 1994, in the 75 largest cities in America, when they analyzed whether there's overrepresentation in crimes that were reported, not just crimes that were charged, crimes that were reported,